Hi, everyone. Welcome to Spill the OT podcast. This is episode 1. And this podcast is going to be about looking at occupational therapy and kind of what they don't teach you in school and what no one's really talking about unless you're at happy hour. So today is going to be our first interview. We're going to talk to Rachel, who has worked in a couple settings. She's worked in acute inpatient rehab as well as acute care right now in a hospital setting. And she graduated about 6.5 years ago, and I was lucky enough to go to school with her, and she's fabulous. And basically, I want to explore what occupational therapy looks like on paper versus what it actually looks like when you're working in the field. Because I know a lot of times OT is pictured as like rainbows and happy, perfect world. But in reality, when we're faced with Medicare and we're going by their guidelines and there's just the day-to-day functioning, I feel like it's not always rainbows and sunshine. So we're going to get Rachel on the line in a minute, and the whole purpose of this podcast is I was starting to feel really burnt out and like I wasn't really making a difference by doing occupational therapy. I felt like Medicare was really kind of guiding our practice, and I tried so many settings. I've worked in a private school, public school. I have done assistive technology. I've done skilled nursing facility. I've done travel therapy. I mean, I've just done every setting I feel like out there. So I've also noticed I'm not the only person that's kind of jumped around, and I don't think that's super unique to me. Of course, there's people that have found their niche and they're super happy and they love occupational therapy, so I'm not knocking them. I think it's awesome. And I think that OT has so much potential. I just feel like there's a lot of information that wasn't totally spelled out to me when I was in school, and now that I've kind of invested so much of my time and money and energy into occupational therapy, I almost feel kind of trapped, like I can't switch careers because I've already invested so much. And I've talked to a couple people and they feel the same way. So I wanted to make this podcast to give us a platform to not only explore different avenues within OT, but also to explore alternative careers. I'm hoping to do several episodes. The first kind of series is going to be on the different settings. So today will be our acute hospital setting. I'm hoping to have somebody who works in a skilled nursing facility, outpatient, clinical hand therapist. I'm going to be doing the one on assistive technology. I'm also hoping to do an episode on acute inpatient, and then we'll do public and private school OT. So there's going to be lots of episodes coming up in the future, but for right now, let's get our mind set for acute hospital setting, and let's get Rachel on the line. All right. Hi, I'm interviewing with Rachel, and she is an OT out in the field for how many years, Rachel?
I think it's like 6.5 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I want to know your whole story. What brought you to OT and what do you like about it?
All right. So I think it's not a glamorous story, but when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to work in the medical field. I knew I couldn't be a nurse. So I have some aunts and uncles who are physical therapists and one who's an occupational therapist. And so I kind of started looking into physical therapy. But then my aunt told me I should look more into occupational therapy because she thought I would like it more. And so I did some volunteering and ended up going that route instead because it kind of just seemed more fun, I guess, in the moment.
So did you do a lot of shadowing?
I did. I shadowed in like a long-term acute care facility, like an LTAC, and helped out over a summer there to kind of get some experience.
Oh, okay. So now that you've been in the field like 6.5 years, do you feel like it's what you expected compared to what you learned in school?
Probably, I would say not for the most part. I think there's some aspects of it that are, but I would say more often than not, I'm faced with things that I would say school did not prepare me for.
What do you wish school had prepared you for? Like, what's the biggest challenge?
I think medical things, and it sounds like in talking with other occupational therapists that that's one thing that OT school really lacks in is preparing you for the stuff outside the books, for medical things, diagnoses, specific things, and really kind of just realizing that once you're with the patient, nothing goes the way you ever plan it to.
So true. Do you feel like your fieldwork prepared you more than the school, or do you wish that you had more fieldwork?
Absolutely. I think that the grad school portion of schooling should be more clinical versus research based, because I think everything I've learned was when I was on the field. Even after school, on my first job, I think I learned more than I ever learned in the classes.
I totally agree. So how many years were you in school, and what degree or degrees do you have?
So it was a total of about 5 years. So we did the combined master's and bachelor program. So we had a bachelor in, I forget what they changed that to, occupational health and well-being or something like that. And then the master's technically in occupational therapy.
Oh, okay. And do you mind sharing how much school cost you? I know we went to the same school, so I have an idea, but this is for anyone who might be listening.
It's hard. Let me try to figure it out. So I paid pretty much for school with loans. So the amount that I paid once at the end of it all was plus interest. I would say without all of the interest added on, I probably graduated. It was probably between $80,000 to $100,000.
Okay.
And I was out of state.
And that's for 5 years, because now I think most of the programs are to be a doctorate. Which are
yes, that is now the goal, is to make an OT a doctorate.
Yep, that's a whole nother discussion. Okay, so where have you been working since you graduated?
When I graduated, I started off in acute rehab. I worked in 2 different facilities for about a total of 4 years-ish. That kind of started wearing me out, so then I transitioned to acute care, and now work in a level 1 trauma hospital doing OT there.
Okay, so you've had 3 jobs then since you graduated?
Yeah, 3 jobs.
Well, you have a better track record than I do. I don't even know how many I've had. I don't keep track.
That's the beauty of OT. There's so many options.
That's true. So do you feel like you found your niche? Like, do you think acute care is where you belong, or are you still looking?
I think of the things that I've done so far, this is definitely my favorite. Is it ultimately what I want to do forever? I'm not sure yet, but I'm the happiest in acute care at the moment. Definitely more so than acute rehab.
Okay. What can you walk us through really quick, just what a typical day looks like for you in acute?
Yes. So come in the morning, and I have a schedule of, it varies day to day, but I would say on average, have about 10 to 15 patients that I have to see, but I'm only expected to see around 8 of them. So anticipating that some people are medically stable and everything, you kind of just wing through the day, honestly. Go up to the floor and just kind of check with nursing, who's appropriate, who's discharging, things like that. And it's difficult to say because every day is very different. You kind of just wing it, honestly, because nothing ever goes as planned in acute care. Okay. You have to fly by the seat of your pants, because the second you get on the floor, you can't really plan for anything, because it's just sometimes chaos, which I like.
So you have to be somebody who can really kind of work on the fly and be flexible.
Yes, absolutely.
Even probably not good for those type A people.
Right. Yes, because it almost seems like the more you plan and try to prepare, the more it falls apart.
Okay. And do you see everybody in one increment? Would you go in for 10 minutes and then leave and see someone else and then go back for another 10 minutes? Or do you see them the whole however long?
I see them, unless there's a reason I have to see them more than once. Typically, I'll see them all at one, between 15 to 30 minutes each person, unless they need more than that. But that's probably the average amount of time. I'll just see them one time and on to the next one.
Okay. So what's one thing that you had no idea about before becoming an OT?
Where do I start? Well, for one, definitely the amount of times that you will be cleaning patients, let's call it toileting.
You can say poop.
Poop.
So much poop.
So much poop. There's times where you just kind of feel like you're a nursing assistant, honestly. Especially in acute care, because everyone is typically so sick that they're very low functioning. I would say that, and I would also say the amount that we kind of have to educate people on who we are and what we do gets really annoying. It gets old fast. Every day I feel like people just don't have any idea, not just patients, like people like other disciplines within the hospital, doctors, residents, nurses, they have no idea what we do. So it's kind of frustrating to do your job and no one knows why you're even here, what you're doing.
Yeah. I know I've had where I just finished doing an OT eval and just explained what occupational therapy is. And then they'll get a phone call or someone will walk in and they'll be like, oh, come meet my nurse.
Yeah. Yes, nurse, or we're the physical therapist, or for everything but an occupational therapist. No matter how much you explain and advocate, it's just a daily battle of being forgotten.
Yeah, I know.
Which makes you kind of feel unimportant sometimes. But,
yeah.
Oh well.
Okay, so down to the nitty gritty things. Can you share with us how much you made, either salary or hourly, when you were a new grad?
I think when I started my first job, it was salaried. I want to say yearly it was about 56 or 58,000 a year, and that was an acute rehab, and that is in Pennsylvania, where cost of living is extremely low. So
okay. So how about PRN work? Because I know we've talked about this, and our PRN rates are really different.
Yes. I did PRN work at the same place where my first job was in acute rehab, and we got paid about $50 an hour. I know at my current job in acute care, our PRN rate is $60 to $70 an hour.
Oh, okay. And mine is, they do different tiers. Mine's $45 an hour if you do the minimum, and then if you do up to 2 days a week, it's $50 an hour. They'll bump it up if you can commit to more time.
Right. Which is crazy because of the discrepancies in cost of living in the areas. It should not be that similar.
I know, but you know what? I think it's all about the market, and I'm up in the Boston area where the market's super flooded.
Right. That's true.
So there's a million of us all competing for the same jobs.
And I'm in the middle of nowhere where we have maybe 5 OTs now.
All right. So if you were 18 and could do it all over again and go back to school or just choose a career straight out of high school, what would you do? Would you do OT?
Probably not. What I would do, I'm not entirely sure, but I really don't think I would do OT. I mean, I just don't feel like, it's not that I hate my job or that I regret doing OT, but I don't think the amount of schooling and work that we put into it, and money that I'm still putting into it, was really worth it, since it's not really what I expected it to be.
I feel like the money piece, especially because, I was really lucky. My parents were able to help out significantly. And then I did travel therapy, so I was able to get my loans out of the way pretty quick. But so many of my friends all have these loans, and it's like it traps them into a career basically.
Yes.
And like you said, if it's a career that you weren't even expecting and it's just totally different, it's like you almost feel, I guess trapped is just the best word.
I say all the time that if I wasn't still paying on my student loans and probably wasn't paying on them for probably the next 30 years, I would definitely probably go back to school for either something completely different or something that would give me the opportunity to branch out more from OT.
Yeah. What about, like, do you think if you went to the CODA, is that something people should explore?
Like a CODA?
Yeah, like a OT assistant?
I want to say yes, because I feel like outside of doing evaluations, they pretty much are an OT. There's not a whole lot more that we can do as an OT than they can. I am noticing though the market for CODAs, they're being hired a lot less. In rehab when I was there, they were definitely cutting back on the CODAs on staff. And I know in acute care, we've had a few CODAs leave, and they're not filling them with CODAs again. They're bringing in OTs. Because for them, time-wise, I guess, it makes more sense to pay for a full OT who can do everything versus just treatments with a CODA. So I think the job market kind of seems like it might be dwindling a little more for CODAs.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I feel like it's definitely a reasonable thing because it's a lot less schooling to do, for the most part, the same thing.
I was on this website. I forget where I learned it. I was at a conference, and it's called willrobotstakemyjob.com. And I typed in occupational therapist, and it was like 1%, like no chance that's going to happen. But I typed in OT assistant and therapy aide, and I think the therapy aide was like an 87% chance that robots will take their job. And the CODA was low, like it might have been like 10%.
Right.
But it did have a bigger rate than OTs.
I mean, I feel like I could maybe see that because a lot of the technology isn't necessarily robots, but it's things where you could set patients up at a screen and they're doing things or other mechanical things for their treatment. So I can kind of see that, actually.
I know, right? All right. So you kind of already answered this, but I'll give you one more shot just in case you feel like sharing. If you could do anything, what would you do as a career? Like you wouldn't fail. You didn't need to pay to go to school. You could just go do anything you wanted.
I mean, if professional dog rescuer were like a legitimate career, I'd do it. I think honestly though, if I like being completely serious, I would probably go back to be like a physician's assistant because I feel like we practically did the same amount of schooling almost, or at least the new OTs coming in doing a doctorate degree. Like if you're going to get a doctorate degree, I sure as heck would not get it in OT. I would go for something else.
Yeah.
But honestly, I've thought about that. I think that's what I would do. If I didn't have student loans right now, I'd go back to school to be a physician.
That's so interesting because I know at least 3 people who are OTs who have said that same thing, that they would go back to be a PA.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems to be a better route because I tend to like the medical aspect of OT anyway. So I just seem like it'd be a better fit. But
All right, last question. What is one piece of advice for either an OT student or someone who's just thinking about becoming OT or a new grad OT?
I think for someone who's just thinking about becoming an OT, I would urge them to really go and observe in multiple settings to really get a true feel for what OT is going to be. And so that you see like the good and the bad.
And probably shadow more than just 1 hour. Like I know when I shadowed, I went for maybe like an hour and a half.
Yeah. Spend like a half a day, a whole day, really get a feel for, because if you're only there for an hour, they're probably going to take you to like their best, cutest little patient who's the ideal rehab candidate and not that grouchy 90-year-old who won't do anything, but you have to force her there. Like, they're not
Totally.
I would say for current students, definitely take the opportunities you can to figure out the different areas, and if there is something you want to specialize in, look into it right away. Because the farther you get out of school, the less motivated you get, honestly, to get specialties or anything like that.
That's a good piece of advice. Is there anything you've considered specializing in?
I at one time considered doing hand therapy. Kind of got away from that. And I am kind of debating getting into like pain management. Not that there's like a specific specialty for it, but I know OT is becoming a lot more used in that with the whole opioid epidemic and everything. So that's kind of intrigued me recently. But hand therapy was just so hard because you need so many hours. So for some of these like specialties, you need to have so many hours in and all this other training. So if you're at a job where you can't do that, it's very difficult.
Yeah, and it's hours specific to that, right? Like it has to be, I think, like 3,500 hours specifically on hands.
I think in Pennsylvania it was 4,000.
Wow.
Related hours, and where I was, I got 0. So it was kind of impossible to do.
Yeah, it like has to be your full-time job for years in order to even get the hours.
Right. Which, and you can't get hired as a hand therapist. So it's complicated. So just think about that when you're getting ready to go out into the field, kind of set yourself up for success there if you really know what you want to do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, thank you so much to everybody who's listening. You can find us at spilltheot.com. It's a website that's under development, but I'm hoping to add some content on there just about alternative careers and just some information that we discuss on the podcast here. And I am also going to make a Facebook group called Spill the OT, and you can join us on there. All right. Thanks so much. Tune in next week. Bye.